Talking to yourself isn't the best thing ever, as some people may say. But one other thing that I want to portray is talking to yourself and discussing things with yourself is or tends to be one of the worst things one can do. One may ask, befuddled, why would that be so? See, when you talk to yourself, the problem is you're the only audience that you have. When you are the only audience that you have, you can only process things based on how much you have accumulated. So technically, your discussion is only limited by your own understanding. So it's easy to fall in the trap that whatever you're doing is good. A lot of people ended up on this path, and well, some of them ended up doing genocides because they were convinced that what they were doing was the best thing. See, in war, it's always easy to say, well, the only thing I have to do, or, well, usually the only solution that you have is to destroy your enemy. Well, that is kind of easy, at least theoretically speaking. But in life, the idea is when you're judging things and the such, when you are the only audience that you have, well, the problem is you're not going to take too many wise decisions. Because, as I said, you're going to be limited by how much you know and how much you can interpret things, right? So, in this case, it is best to be surrounded by people. Because when you're surrounded by people who can tell you great things, or at least different points of view, and who can actually tell you things right, instead of what you might want to hear, well, that is much, much better, right? Because you have people who can uplift you, or at least who can slap you back into reality and show you that your path isn't necessarily gonna serve you, or that it can serve you, but they might have some improvements. Another, this equally good side is when you're surrounded by toxic people. Some people might say, well, why would that be? Well, for two reasons. See, I always see people as examples of what to do and what not to do. Because if people are toxic, or if people are whatever way they are, I just see them for the greater potential that they are. It is kind of inevitable for me. But what they choose to function through is usually a smaller form or a smaller facet of them, typically because of being stuck in certain layers of misery. So the point is, when they are doing certain things, I have the patience to watch them if, like the situation allows. And I can see that, well, they end up having certain, things returned back to them. Typically, miserable people end up in miserable situations. So if they're doing those things for me, I see those as an example. And I can figure out this way that if I do that thing, well, I might end up at least or at most like that. So the point is, I don't need to repeat those lessons or those things or those mistakes or whatever, because now I have an indirect approach to life, right? A new opinion is always better. When you're surrounded by toxic people, you will be surprised to hear that toxic people are kind of always, just like kind-hearted people, or even more than them, they are very straightforward, right? Because miserable people can only tell you miserable things. They're not going to applaud you for your things. They're going to tell you miserable things. Yes, they're not going to tell you the truth that you've done great with some project or whatever else, but they're telling you the truth. They are miserable and, well, they hate their life most likely, but their language will be different, right? A lot of people just take the base words of what many people say, but they don't understand the underlying meaning, right? Because a lot of people are pained, and it's much harder for someone to say that they hate their lives, so they will probably say that they hate you, or that you're not good enough, or things like this, right? Having such people in your life, it is a good thing. It is in a way even better at some cases. In some cases, not always, but it is better than having to think things all by yourself. Because as I said, when you're the only audience that you have, well, that's a bit depressing, honestly. Now, if you're a wise person, well, probably the presence of other people may not be equally needed. But yet again, we all require different points of view and opinion so that we can take better decisions, right? or at least hear some other sides of the stories or other facets of reality, because everyone has their own perceptions. When you're surrounded by toxic people, see, they always, kind of always tell you the truth. Now, this is something that a lot of people will argue against, but I do understand their point. But people look only at the facade of things. I usually look at the core aspect of things. See, miserable people, they're miserable, right? They're gonna tell you lies that you're bad, you're not good enough, but they always tell you the truth in the sense that they are miserable. So they will always say miserable things, which is a truth. And it's gonna be different for others to accept because apparently it is not that logical. Such toxic people will tell you all sorts of things, yes, but if you look at things at face value, you're gonna disregard them because they feel painful. But when you look at these things from a better perspective, from a deeper perspective, you will see the fact that those miserable people are actually hinting at the prison that you're living in. See, my way of observing things tells me that people live in a prison of their own mind and in a prison of society, right? Because there's a society physical prison and there's society meaning based prison, or the morality prison, as I call it. So I'm gonna focus a bit only on the prison of the mind. See, the prison of the mind is created by all your illusions, all your ideas, pieces of meaning, opinions that you have gathered from the others, and usually it's miserable ones. And once they are ideas from the others, it can be hard to snap out of them, because when you're surrounded by people who act the same, isn't it hard to simply snap out of this societal prison? Because when everyone acts the same, you're gonna think that, you're gonna be the odd one out if you act differently. This is part of the societal prison. When it comes to the mind prison, see, the problem with the mind prison is that it is your own energy. We are all, our own energy is our blind side, because it is hard to observe limitations that we have invested in. Because if someone tells you that you suck, well, if you have a certain level of awareness, it's not going to affect you. You're not going to take it into account because you know that it is someone else's meaning, someone else's perspective. If you have a certain understanding of how you function, you will know that at least you're doing the best you can at each and every moment in your life. So maybe you're not good for their expectations, but maybe their expectations are too high, or they're just some miserable piece of shit that doesn't have anything else to say. So, what these miserable people are telling you is that you are living in a societal prison with them, right? Because they are the miserable ones that are making your life also equally miserable, at least, and you're the loser that, wastes time with them. You're not hearing these things, you're just hearing what your, the surface, right? What your mind, in its primitivism wants to show you. The mind can be trained, right? You can train your mind to hear things beyond the regular meaning. That's why I tell people meaning is irrelevant. But, meaning can have multiple layers, just like English language has multiple layers, right? Religion is a cult. It is deeply a cult. You'll see all sorts of people tell you one thing. What do they tell you? They're all miserable. Yes, but what do they tell you? They tell you bless, bless in the name of God, right? But what does bless mean? Well, bless in the occult version of the language English, bless means be less, right? So they're telling you be less in the name of Jesus. Now, I can't care about Jesus or other such personalities because I'm not a historian. I prefer putting my faith into humans who are alive. While these people have existed, it's not my purpose to simply prove that they did or not. I prefer investing my energy into people who can actually inspire me in this current life, and people who are actually alive and are currently doing something. Because if you're expecting people who have passed away to do things, well, you're probably stuck in some level of psychiatry. So this being said, hopefully this video raised a bit of awareness. You're appreciated, take care, and this being said, Ferenc Board signing out.